Some stars survived the harshest years of fame, enduring Hollywood's rejection, brutal criticism, and the pressure to appear perfect in public at all times. Yet they could not survive a misaligned light bulb, a glass door, a skiing accident, or an action that seemed completely harmless. Oh my God. The most frightening thing is not that these accidents were enormous. It is their very ordinariness that sends a chill through me. And today, we are reopening the strangest final chapters in the lives of 15 famous figures. Some died just as their careers were about to enter their brightest period. Others had spent decades under the spotlight only to fall inside their own homes. And some cases forced the entire entertainment industry to confront mistakes it had once tried to dismiss. If you want me to explore more movies, TV shows, or Hollywood secrets, just leave a comment below. I'm Ryan. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and let's start exploring the main content of this video together. Claude Francois. Claude Francois could change the entire atmosphere of a room with just a few steps across the stage. To millions of French people, he was not merely a singer, but Clo-Clo, a pop icon known for his perfect hair, energetic movements, and distinctive charisma. By the late 1970s, Claude had sold more than 35 million records, filled theaters, and become one of the most famous performers in France. On March 11, 1978, after returning to his Paris apartment from filming a BBC special, Claude entered the bathroom without knowing it would be the final day of his life. When he noticed that a light bulb was out of alignment, he casually reached up to adjust it, while his body and the surrounding area were still wet. Electricity came into contact with water, electrocuting Claude and killing him inside the apartment. The man who had once commanded lights, sound, and thousands of spectators was taken by a small source of light inside his own home. The final chapter of his life had no applause and no farewell, only a room that suddenly fell silent. Claude's music lives on, but his death also left behind a warning that when electricity and water come together, a single careless moment can lead to irreversible consequences. Marc Frechette. Marc Frechette did not enter Hollywood through the traditional path. With no formal training or carefully constructed image, he was discovered because of his young, raw, and unstable energy, then given the leading role in Zabriskie Point. Marc's tense, unpredictable face perfectly matched the rebellious spirit of the film, leading many people to believe he could become a truly distinctive screen presence. But attention came quickly and disappeared just as fast. His later roles did not bring the success people had expected, while his life moved increasingly farther away from the film industry. By the middle of the 1970s, the actor who had once stood before the camera with so much promise was in prison. Whether he might have rebuilt his life remained an unanswered question, one he would never have the chance to answer himself. On September 27, 1975, while lifting weights in prison, a barbell weighing approximately 68 kilograms fell onto Marc's neck, causing fatal injuries. He died at only 27 years old. Although authorities ruled the death an accident, it still left behind the feeling of an unfinished life. A career that had briefly flashed into view lost its balance and vanished before anyone could discover who Marc might truly have become. Vic Morrow. Vic Morrow spent years establishing himself through Combat, Blackboard Jungle, and numerous film and television productions. With his weathered appearance and tough manner, he was regarded as a professional actor who understood cameras, film sets, and the discipline of production. On the night of July 23, 1982, Vic took part in an action scene for Twilight Zone that involved a helicopter and multiple special effects. When the helicopter malfunctioned and crashed into the filming area, he and two child actors were killed. A scene designed to imitate danger suddenly became a real disaster with no call to cut and no opportunity for another take. The tragedy confronted Hollywood with serious questions about responsibility and the protection of child actors and the supervision of dangerous scenes. Vic Morrow's death became a painful milestone in the history of film set safety. He died believing that the people around him had properly fulfilled their responsibilities, leaving behind a lesson for which the film industry paid with real lives. John Denver. John Denver's warm voice transformed Take Me Home Country Roads into the sound of long drives, distant mountains, and the feeling of returning home. To millions of people, he was an artist connected with nature, peace, and wide-open skies. On October 12, 1997, John was piloting a small experimental aircraft over Monterey Bay. When he needed to switch fuel tanks, he had to reach toward a control that had been installed in a difficult-to-access position. The aircraft became unstable, plunged into the ocean, and took his life at the age of 53. The heartbreaking part is that the sky, which had symbolized freedom in John's music, gave him no opportunity to correct his mistake during his final flight. His songs continue to carry listeners along roads he can no longer travel, while the accident reminds us that experience cannot eliminate every danger. And while John was operating his own vehicle, Brandon Lee placed his life in the hands of a film crew that believed every prop had been inspected. Brandon Lee. As the son of Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee entered Hollywood beneath the weight of an enormous legacy. However, he did not want to be seen only as his father's successor. With his own style and a determination to prove himself, Brandon finally found his breakthrough opportunity playing Eric Draven in The Crow, a project expected to open a new chapter in his career. On March 31, 1993, in Wilmington, North Carolina, Brandon was filming a scene involving a prop gun. The weapon was believed to be safe, but a series of mistakes during preparation caused it to inflict a real injury. Brandon was taken to the hospital and underwent hours of surgery, but he died at only 28 years old. He had not performed any reckless action. He had simply stood in the correct position inside an environment he had every right to believe was under control. The Crow later became a beloved film and helped Brandon escape the shadow of his legendary father. But he was no longer there to witness its success. The movie that should have been a doorway to his future instead became his farewell. His tragedy also forced Hollywood to re-examine prop gun inspection procedures and its responsibility to protect actors on film sets. Buddy Clark. Buddy Clark belonged to an era when a voice coming through the radio could turn a performer into a familiar presence in millions of homes. With his smooth and refined voice, songs such as Linda and I'll Dance at Your Wedding helped make him one of the most beloved singers of the late 1940s. On October 1, 1949, Buddy chartered a small airplane to attend the football game between Stanford and Michigan, then planned to return to Los Angeles for a radio program. During the return flight, the aircraft ran out of fuel, forcing the pilot to make an emergency landing on Beverly Boulevard. The plane crashed, leaving Buddy with severe head injuries, and he died shortly afterward. The investigation determined that the pilot had acted recklessly, making the tragedy even more painful because it appeared entirely preventable. A man who was returning to raise his voice in song never reached the studio. Buddy's songs continued to be heard, but his story reminds us that famous people sometimes pay the price for another person's carelessness, even when they themselves did nothing wrong. Charles McGraw. Charles McGraw appeared on screen with a gravelly voice, angular features, and a stern gaze, becoming a familiar presence in film noir and crime movies. Through works such as The Narrow Margin and Spartacus, he often portrayed tough, experienced men who seemed capable of surviving any danger. On July 29, 1980, Charles was inside his Studio City home when he slipped in the bathroom and fell through a glass door. The shattered glass caused severe injuries, including damage to an artery in his arm. He lost blood so rapidly that he died before he could be saved. After more than 3 decades of building the image of a survivor on screen, Charles was defeated by a household accident that seemed almost impossible. His death showed how slippery surfaces, wet areas, and unsafe glass can produce devastating consequences within seconds. But while Charles's tragedy resulted from an unexpected fall, Steve Peregrine Took died because of something so small that the story sounds almost unbelievable. Steve Peregrine Took. Steve Peregrine Took had a free-spirited appearance, a restless nature, and an unpredictable creative ability. While working with Mark Bolan in Tyrannosaurus Rex, He helped create music that was strange, playful, and far removed from the safe products of the mainstream market, leaving a distinctive mark on the band's early period. On October 27, 1980, the final chapter of Took's life did not unfold on stage or during a noisy tour. He choked on a cocktail cherry. The small piece of fruit blocked his airway and created a fatal emergency, taking his life in an accident that was almost silent. Took's death shows that danger sometimes appears in a form so small that no one recognizes it as a threat. His story also reminds us that responding quickly during the first few minutes when someone is choking can determine everything. And if this accident already seems difficult to believe, Joe Spinell takes us back to another bathroom where timely assistance might have produced a different ending. Joe Spinell. Joe Spinell did not need a polished appearance to dominate a scene. With his rough face, heavy gaze, and deeply unsettling energy, he blended into the harsh worlds of The Godfather and Taxi Driver as though those characters truly belonged to his own life. On January 13, 1989, Joe slipped in the bathroom and suffered a serious cut from a glass door. Instead of seeking emergency medical care, he lay down on the sofa, possibly because he did not realize how much blood he was losing or was no longer alert enough to assess the situation. The wound remained uncontrolled, and Joe died at the age of 52. The painful truth is that the line between a treatable accident and a tragedy sometimes comes down to calling for help only a few minutes earlier. Joe's story reminds us that when someone has a deep wound, feels dizzy, or continues bleeding, lying down and waiting can allow the condition to become silently dangerous. But the next case happened outdoors during a family game that appeared completely harmless. Michael Kennedy. Michael Kennedy was born into a family whose name had become part of American history. Power, public attention, and a chain of tragedies stretching across generations meant that every event in his life could easily become news, even though Michael was neither an actor nor a singer. On December 31st, 1997, Michael was spending the winter holiday with his family in Aspen, Colorado, and joined a game that combined football with skiing. While concentrating on the ball, he lost control and struck a tree with tremendous force. Although he was wearing a helmet, the impact still caused injuries that could not be treated, and Michael died at only 39 years old. A year-end family activity became another painful chapter for the Kennedy family within a matter of seconds. Michael's death showed that protective equipment can reduce risk, but cannot completely eliminate the consequences of speed and impact. And only a few days later, America witnessed another mountain accident involving a name even more familiar in popular culture. Victor Sen Young. Victor Sen Young entered millions of American homes through his role as Hop Sing in Bonanza. He was one of the familiar faces who helped turn the Western series into a television ritual for many families. His character brought warmth and a distinctive quality to the vast world of the Ponderosa. Away from the screen, Victor lived a much quieter life. In 1980, he spent time at his North Hollywood home making pottery for his shop. There is something beautiful about the image of a veteran actor leaving the studio behind, sitting among handmade objects and creating something that could be held in the hands. But that private space contained an invisible danger. A leak connected to the kiln caused toxic gas to spread through the house. Unlike flames, gas may not produce a visible image that immediately makes people panic. It does not necessarily create a loud noise or give victims enough time to understand what is happening. Victor was poisoned and died inside his own home. The news shocked his colleagues and fans. At the funeral, Pernell Roberts, his Bonanza co-star, paid tribute to him. That detail reminds me that behind old television episodes were not only fictional characters, there were real friendships, relationships that lasted for years, and people who genuinely grieved when a member of the cast was gone. Glenn Shaddix. Glenn Shaddix had a gift for making strangeness captivating. In Beetlejuice, his portrayal of Otho was funny, self-important, and perfectly suited to Tim Burton's bizarre world. Glenn did not need to be the leading man to claim a place in the audience's memory. Just a few lines, a look, and precise comic timing were enough to make his character stand out in a film already filled with unforgettable images. He also provided the voice of the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas, further proving his ability to give eccentric characters personalities of their own. Glenn seemed to understand that being unusual did not have to mean being cold. It could be funny, charming, and even warm. That is why fans still recognize him even when his name is not the largest one on the poster. On September 7, 2010, Glenn was at home in Birmingham, Alabama. He tripped in the kitchen and struck his head against a hard surface, believed to have been a countertop or sink. The severe injury caused his death at the age of 58. An actor who had brought laughter into supernatural worlds died because of a fall that looked anything but dramatic. There was no film crew, no colleague standing nearby, and no one able to turn that moment into a situation that could be controlled. The kitchen is one of the most familiar places in a home, but table corners, slippery floors, and hard surfaces can transform an ordinary stumble into a dangerous injury, especially when the head takes the direct impact. Sonny Bono. Sonny Bono once stood under the lights beside Cher, forming one of the most recognizable couples in American popular culture. Their music television program and unusual interaction made Sonny a face associated with an entire era. He did not possess the image of a perfect romantic leading man, but he had an awkward charm, a sense of humor, and an ability to make audiences feel that he was approachable. What made Sonny unusual was that he did not stop when the musical chapter of his life ended. He turned toward politics and built a second public career. From an entertainer standing beside Cher, Sonny became an elected public official. Not many people can completely change the way the public sees them like that. He lived several versions of a life within a single journey. On January 5, 1998, Sonny was skiing at Heavenly Mountain in Nevada. It should have been a period of rest, far from meeting rooms, campaigns, and memories of old performances. But while descending the slope, he struck a tree with tremendous force. The injuries took his life at the age of 62. The news was even more shocking because it occurred not long after Michael Kennedy's accident. Two famous figures, two mountainsides, and two collisions with trees within a brief period of time. Resorts are often promoted through images of beauty, freedom, and enjoyment, but speed on snow can turn a small deviation into consequences that cannot be undone. Payne Stewart. Payne Stewart always stood out because of his loose-fitting pants, tam o' shanter cap, and unmistakable classic style. But behind that image was an exceptional athlete with 11 PGA Tour victories, 3 major championships, and a competitive spirit respected by fans and fellow players alike. On October 25, 1999, Payne boarded a private aircraft for a flight from Orlando to Dallas. After takeoff, the plane experienced a loss of cabin pressure, which could rapidly cause the people inside to suffer from oxygen deprivation and lose the ability to respond before recognizing how serious the danger had become. The aircraft stopped communicating but continued flying on autopilot. Fighter jets were dispatched to follow it, but they could not reach the 6 people inside. After traveling more than 1,500 miles in silence, the plane ran out of fuel and crashed into a field in South Dakota, killing Payne, the 2 pilots, and 3 other passengers. Payne was only 42 years old and remained one of golf's most distinctive personalities. The accident became a haunting image of helplessness, as technology could keep the aircraft in the sky, but could not save the people inside. The story also showed the life or death importance of pressurization systems, oxygen equipment, and the ability to recognize the symptoms of oxygen deprivation. Cliff Simon. Cliff Simon entered acting with a level of physical training that very few of his colleagues possessed. Before becoming known to television audiences, he had participated in gymnastics and professional swimming. He understood balance, strength, breathing, and discipline. When he appeared on screen, Cliff carried the confidence of someone who genuinely knew what his body could do. In Stargate SG-1, he played Bale, an intelligent, dangerous, and charismatic villain. Cliff did not turn the character into a one-dimensional bad guy. He brought subtle humor, arrogance, and an appeal that made viewers want the character to be defeated while also hoping he would continue appearing. In a world filled with heroes, Bale still became a face that fans remembered for a very long time. On March 9, 2021, Cliff went to Topanga Beach in California to go kiteboarding. The activity combines wind, water, speed, and the ability to control equipment. It requires great skill, but it also contains elements that can change faster than human reflexes. Given Cliff's athletic background, this was probably not an unusual choice. It suited his energetic and adventurous spirit.
During the activity, Cliff was involved in an accident, lost control, and suffered injuries that proved fatal. He died at the age of 58. The news caused profound grief throughout the science fiction community, where fans had grown to love the energy and presence he brought to Stargate SG-1. Looking back at these 15 stories, I realized that there is no single type of person who is especially likely to become the victim of an accident. They were singers, actors, athletes, politicians, and members of a famous family. Some were at the height of their careers, others had stepped away from the spotlight. Some were on film sets surrounded by dozens of crew members, while others were alone in a bathroom or kitchen. The most frightening thing they shared is that most of their final days began very normally. A light bulb needed adjusting, a flight needed to be completed, a scene needed to be filmed, a family game was underway. Someone entered a bathroom, mixed a drink, or participated in a sport they loved. Tragedy does not send advance notice. It often arrives when people feel safest. These stories also reveal the difference between unpredictable risks and preventable mistakes. Some incidents involved failed safety procedures, unsuitable equipment, recklessness, or delayed emergency care. When an accident could have been prevented but still occurs, the pain does not belong only to the victim's family. It becomes the moral responsibility of an entire profession or community. The first lesson I want to leave behind is not to underestimate familiar dangers. Electricity near water glass in bathrooms, toxic gas from fuel-burning equipment, slippery floors and head injuries can all be far more serious than they appear. Inspecting equipment, installing alarms, using safe materials, and calling emergency services quickly are not signs of fear. They are ways of protecting the years still ahead of us. The second lesson is that no job scene or performance is worth a human life. Producers, managers, and equipment operators must understand that experience cannot replace proper procedures. An actor should not have to gamble with their life simply because a film crew wants to complete its schedule. A passenger should not have to pay the price because the person operating a vehicle ignored basic requirements. Finally, I believe we should remember these people for more than the moments in which they died. Claude Francois still has his music. John Denver still carries listeners back to country roads. Brandon Lee still lives through The Crow. Vic Morrow, Charles McGraw, Joe Spinell, Glenn Shaddix, and Cliff Simon still appear whenever an old film or television episode is played again. Payne Stewart is still remembered whenever fans see that proud, classic style of golf. Tragedy may become the final headline, but it should not erase the entire life that came before that headline. I'm Ryan, and honestly, today's stories leave me feeling both sad and grateful. Sad for the futures that were taken away, but grateful that their art talent and memories still have enough power to make us stop, listen, and learn something. Let me know which person stayed in your thoughts the longest and which story you believe should have been prevented. Don't forget to like, subscribe to Ryan's Hollywood Uncovered, and share this video with people who enjoy the lesser-known secrets of Hollywood. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Take care of yourself, cherish the people beside you, and I'll see you again in our next exploration.